Okay, we are recording. Today's guest is Martha Lopez-Anderson. So we met at an event that I emceed for her organization earlier this year, Parent Heart Watch. Now, this is not a club that anyone wants to be a part of. It's made up of parents who tragically lost their children from sudden cardiac arrest, also known as SCA, many of them during a sporting event. After the sudden death of her seemingly healthy 10-year-old son in 2004 blindsided Martha and her family, she immersed herself in education and training related to the prevention and treatment of SCA in youth. Now, Martha and the organization that she is with, Parent Heart Watch, advocate for prevention strategies like early heart screenings and for life-saving tools to be available wherever children gather that can be used in the event of a cardiac emergency. She speaks on these topics, she's co-authored research papers, and still manages to find time to care for her family and her husband of 30 years, Andy, and their 2 sons. Martha, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much, Amanda, for having me.
So just before we started the show, you told me you've just had a pretty incredible experience, a long walk, a hike. Tell me about that and what that was for and really how it transformed you.
Yes, so in May of this year, I had the opportunity to do the Camino, and I chose the Camino Central, which is from Porto, Portugal, to Santiago de Compostela in Spain, and that is 162 miles. I was able to do that over a course of 12 days with 3 days of rest. So total 15 days, if you will. And it was an amazing experience, something that I wanted to do for over a decade. And but life just had gotten in the way and I had not been able to do so. So met amazing people from all over the country, saw the most beautiful scenery, walked through farms, through forests, through cities, through industrial areas. It was amazing in every way. It was very physically and mentally taxing. And I also had the opportunity to raise funds for Parent Heart Watch. People from all over the world supported this walk. Even pilgrims that I met along the way and told them why I was walking also supported me, which meant a lot because these were people that just learned about the organization and had just met me. But
and you raised a significant amount of money for Parent Heart Watch, did you not?
Nearly $20,000.
Had you ever done anything like this before? And you did this alone, correct?
I did this alone. It is said that when you go alone, it is a different experience. When you go with other people, you tend to stay with the people that you know and you're not open to meeting others. And so I didn't want that to happen. I met people, like I said, from all over the world of different ages who were doing the Camino, some for similar reasons, some for completely different. People often do it because of the loss of a loved one, and also the loss of a marriage, the loss of a job. And others do it because they love hiking, period. And I was really amazed at the number of people that had been, this was not their first Camino. I couldn't believe it. And also the great span of ages from people in their 20s, but mostly people my age. I'm in my 50s, late 50s, and met people in their 80s who were walking as well.
How do you think it changed you?
Well, it made me realize that I am capable of doing things that I never thought I could. Living in Florida, I live in a very flat state. So the uphills and downhills were tremendous and something that I couldn't have possibly prepared for here, just walking in Florida. But just again, you go there and you have no idea I had never done this. You start walking. You have to be on the lookout for those yellow arrows that tell you that you're going the right way. And you have no idea if you're going to meet someone, if you're going to be alone. You just don't know. So
Yeah.
it's something new every day.
One of the things that really interests me about that is what that's like to be alone with your thoughts, right? I mean, were you lonely, or did you find it to be kind of a comforting thing that you could be alone and be okay?
I found it gives you a lot of time to reflect, right? And even when you're walking and maybe perhaps there's someone next to you, in front of you, and some of those conversations may be very brief and others become incredible, very deep conversations. And I had a lot of times of deep thought, and I cried immensely many times, especially when I walked into these incredible, beautiful churches and chapels and just places that I just stood in. It's like, I'm here, I'm experiencing this. And it's something that no one can take away from you. Being in the middle of the forest, surrounded by nothing but trees and yourself. That is amazing. And you hear yourself breathe. You hear every step that you take. Yeah, it's tremendous. And it allows you to do deep reflection. And again, but I mostly was grateful for the opportunity of finally doing so.
And I know part of this is always about healing. Anytime you do something this major in life, your son passed away in 2004 and from SCA, and that's what got you interested in this organization. Talk to me, if you will, about that experience and how you turned it into action.
So I will say that I was lucky enough that Parent Heart Watch found me. After losing Sean in 2004, my husband and I felt very alone. We felt like this had only happened to us. And it wasn't until one of the co-founders of Parent Heart Watch reached out and said, you don't know me, I don't know you, but we have something in common. And she proceeded to share the story of her own loss of her daughter to sudden cardiac arrest. So that was an incredible relief because, again, we had felt so alone. So I was incredibly grateful when she reached out. And then when I had the opportunity to come to my very first Parent Heart Watch conference, where I was surrounded by people that knew exactly what I was going through and how I felt, but also people that realized that we could turn our tragedy into action to help other families not endure the incredible pain of losing a child suddenly and unexpectedly to really what we feel is a preventable outcome.
What were the circumstances of Sean's death, if you're comfortable talking about that?
Sure. Well, Sean was an active 10-year-old boy. My husband and I did everything to provide a nurturing home, healthy foods. He never missed a well child checkup, never missed a day of school. And as a matter of fact, he had a well child checkup a month prior to when he was rollerblading on the sidewalk in front of our home and suddenly collapsed. I did not witness Sean's collapse, but those that did at the moment thought that he had epilepsy because he was exhibiting seizure-like activity, which of course I later learned that seizure-like activity is common in cardiac arrest. And so because of the delay in those recognizing what was happening, there was delay in Sean receiving CPR, which is critical in cardiac arrest. It wasn't until a neighbor who's also a registered nurse recognized he wasn't breathing. She started chest compressions, and then an AED, an automated external defibrillator, was not available until EMS arrived, which was more than 10 minutes later. And despite the fact that they worked on Sean for a very long time on the scene, he was transported to the hospital where he later was declared brain dead. And shortly thereafter, he passed away.
And, when we hear about these situations, right, we think, oh, well, this is rare. This doesn't happen very often. I think as a news reporter, I heard about it most involving sports teams where, oh, it's hot. So this person collapses. He's taken to the hospital. He passes away, a young person. Well, he must have had an undiagnosed heart condition. But that's what Parent Heart Watch does, right, is to convince people that, no, this isn't that rare, that it is happening more often than we think, and that it is preventable, right? I mean, that's what your organization does. Talk to me about Parent Heart Watch. And I know you said it was started by four moms, right?
Four moms like myself, and they all had different interests when they started the organization. One of the moms was really focused on heart screenings, which back then was really very few people were discussing it or even doing it. Another mom was very focused on automated external defibrillators because her son was in this incredible state-of-the-art facility, but yet a life-saving device was not available. So that became and continues to be her focus. Another was really focused on data and also keeping track of other families that were losing kids, or also cases of saves, not just cases of death, but also survival. So she was keeping track, a database, if you will, of cases across the country. And then the other mom really focused on making sure that families were contacted so they knew they were not alone, that Parent Heart Watch existed and how they could get involved. And so all of those things combined, really, which started as a grassroots movement, was formalized in 2005. And so, again, families affected by sudden cardiac arrest, whether it's a loss or a child that suffered cardiac arrest or was diagnosed with a heart condition without suffering cardiac arrest, all these families coming together with one purpose, to really educate the public. This is not rare, as you said. Over 23,000 kids are affected annually. And it's not limited to student athletes. It affects all ages, as well as those that could be sitting at their desk, laying in bed and sleeping. It all depends on the condition that they have. Some are at greater risk during exertion, during a sport. But again, then the activities involved. So Parent Heart Watch is very focused on educating, which is really critical, educating the public to know what are the warning signs and symptoms of a heart condition so that they can be mindful if their child is exhibiting those and getting proper care. Gathering their family heart health history so that their child's primary care provider can ask the proper questions, right? When parents complete that pre-participation physical evaluation form, it's important that they do it with their child, not for their child. They don't know what their child is feeling or not feeling. So it's really critical that that is with the child, asking, intentionally completing this form. And so obviously screenings, we advocate for heart screenings. And what does a screening mean? As a baseline, an electrocardiogram, an EKG, which is painless, non-invasive, and it's quick, but has the ability of detecting at least almost 90% of the conditions that can lead to sudden cardiac arrest and death. So we feel that a baseline EKG is a place to start. That may lead to other testing. So in addition to that, we know that if we cannot identify all the kids at risk, we have to be prepared, right, for that cardiac emergency.
And that's
And so that
equipment, right?
means that, well, equipment and also having a plan in place that's written and well practiced. So we feel that schools and any place where young people gather should be prepared. They should have a plan in place that's written and well practiced. They should have trained individuals, faculty, staff, volunteers on how to recognize and respond to a cardiac emergency, and having these life-saving devices that can make the difference between life and death. And so we learned that CPR and AED are amazing in saving lives, but we've also learned that if these devices are placed and they're either not properly placed, not properly maintained, and they're not retrieved and used, it's like having nothing. So,
Right. I mean, they have to be available. Somebody has to know how to use them. And I think what struck me at your event was the stories of places they weren't available and how people had to advocate to put them in certain places, places where kids play sports or camps or after school programs, which seems just a no-brainer. And the thought that they're not there is unbelievable. I've talked to several parents on my show who have lost a child, and it's easy and probably the norm to retreat, to say, I'm done. I have no more to give. I've experienced the worst grief that a person can experience. How did you take that feeling and turn it into just being really proactive about this issue for 20 years? I mean, do you feel like it's part of your son's legacy?
absolutely. I had to take time to grieve. And I always tell newly affected parents that it's important to grieve your child, because we can't help others until we help ourselves. That's really important. But one of the things, Amanda, that I can say is I considered myself an informed and resourceful parent, and I was completely blindsided by sudden cardiac arrest. And so that really drove me to get more involved, because I said, I didn't know. For sure, other parents don't know, just like our co-founders. And so, yeah, I became just almost obsessed with getting really informed, going to a lot of medical conferences, because I wanted to make sure that I could really be educated so I could convey that information to other people. So hopefully they never have to be affected by sudden cardiac arrest. And I've learned along the way over the past almost 20 years that most people think it's not going to happen to them. And that is such a wrong, right, approach and attitude. What they really need to keep in mind is that, yes, it can happen to them. But most importantly, it is preventable. And then we offer the tools so that they don't have to go to, different places. They can go to our website. They can contact us. They can also look it up on their own if they feel that's a better approach for them. But we provide all the tools for them to protect their child, and for young adults to protect themselves.
You have thousands of members, right? I mean, all over the country. This transcends. You're in Florida, but the people who are in this organization are from everywhere. How do you talk to a parent who's just lost a child and use your own experience with grief to try to support them?
Well, that is one of the duties of my job. That is what I do. Reaching out to newly affected families. I know myself, people need time to grieve, but all I do is reach out to them to let them know they're not alone. And when they're ready, we're here for them. I'm here for them. And so a lot of times, again, people are lost in deep grief, in as they should, right? Losing a child suddenly and unexpectedly when they appear to be seemingly healthy is something that is hard to come to terms with. And then I can tell you from my own perspective, Amanda, that learning that my child's death was potentially preventable was like losing him all over again. And so I always keep that in mind. And I'm very careful when I reach out to families. But again, they sometimes I reach out to families and they reach out back to me within a month, several months, sometimes a year. It's on their terms. It's when they're ready. But often families reach out because they're getting bombarded with information, whether it's from a medical examiner or coroner's office, and it's terminology that they can't understand, they can't comprehend. And so we're here for them for that as well, providing guidance on the importance of collecting and storing tissue samples, so that postmortem genetic testing can be conducted if the cause of death is not clearly found at autopsy. Sometimes it takes months, and that's really hard for families also to deal with. But I think that I give them, to a certain extent, a little bit of hope, right? That, look, I'm here. I too lost my child, but I'm here and this is what I'm doing. And so they can see themselves and me and realize, because at times the reality is sometimes people want to give up. They go to a very dark place and they want to give up because of that, profound loss that they've had. But I just remind them that it's part of the grieving process, but that there's things that they can do to honor their child's memory.
And you have two sons, correct?
Yep.
How old are they?
Well, my oldest son, Alan, is 40, and my youngest was Sean, and Sean would have been 30. He would have been turning actually 31.
Okay. So how has this changed your family? I mean, obviously it's not easy to continue to go on. You've gone on with Parent Heart Watch, but how has it changed your family or informed them?
It's changed us tremendously. I mean, it shook my marriage to its core. And I'm happy that, we're stronger than ever. And 31 years of marriage strong. And, but yeah, it shook our marriage to its core. Many marriages don't survive the loss of a child. And, my oldest son, unfortunately, Sean passed away on my oldest son's birthday. So that is a constant reminder for him. It's a very bittersweet day for me. It's changed the way we see life. We know that life is very fragile, that it can change in an instant, forever. You focus more on the real important things and don't sweat those silly things that sometimes, we let them get to us. It's just a lot of things change. And we obviously, I always tell people that I feel like I had to go to sudden cardiac arrest university. And as a result, so did my family. We're all acutely aware of where AEDs are or where they're not. If they're properly maintained, we're always checking AEDs where
I was going to say, wherever you go, do you look? Like if you're in a hotel or you're in some kind of a convention center, something like that.
Absolutely. And I cannot tell you how many times I found AEDs that have expired pads or expired batteries. And so, but it's also an opportunity to educate, right? People. And if they're not equipped with one, why not? And how can we help them? How can we help them get equipped? It's a constant thing, but all our family is so much more educated about sudden cardiac arrest and about saving lives, just both through early detection and by being prepared. Everybody, knows CPR and how to use an AED, even though AEDs are for anyone to use with or without training. So, but when you know what to expect from the device, what a device does and doesn't do, I think it's so much better.
That makes a lot of sense. So this podcast, we focus on women and life transformation. And obviously you had a transformation that you didn't ask for, that you didn't expect, but it's obviously become your mission. It's become your life's work and your passion. What kind of advice would you have for women, especially someone who's lost a child, about how do you find your purpose? How do you pick up those pieces and you never move on, but how do you move forward?
Well, I always tell women and people in general, if they've been personally affected, whether a sudden cardiac arrest or another condition, share your story. Share your story. Sharing your story is a way of, again, educating, raising awareness. You never know who's listening in the room. Never know. And I can tell you how many times I've been contacted by someone who heard me tell my story, and that prompted them to contact me because they said, I'm afraid that my child's school is not prepared, or I'm afraid, how can I, affect change here? So there's many different ways. So sharing the story is really critical. But I think as women, as moms, it's important for us to use our voices, right, to protect our children. It's very, very important, and that we follow that mom gut instinct. If we feel something isn't right, it's okay to question an opinion or a decision if you don't agree with it. It's okay, especially as it relates to your child's health and welfare.
Right. To be an advocate, to be a health advocate.
Absolutely.
That's what we're here for. So talk to me about this event you have coming up in February of next year. This is pretty exciting. So tell me about that.
It is very exciting. And so this is something that started as a conversation at our annual Heart to Heart that you were at. So people are starting, we should, come together and do a National Youth Heart Screening Day. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're doing that on February 1st, 2025. And what does that mean? That means that member organizations across the country have agreed to provide free heart screenings to children and young adults. And so, when we say young adults, we go all the way to college age. And that, again, it will be providing a heart screening. Anybody that goes to the heart screening events also learns how to do CPR, hands-only CPR, and how to use an AED. That's just something that we incorporate in our screening events because we have a captive audience, right? Why not show them? And also families learn that screenings are not a one and done, right? Just because your child gets screened today doesn't mean your child is good forever. Screenings need to be done, during different development stages. And so we say every other year or of exhibiting warning signs and symptoms. And we hope to change the standard of care. So one day kids are screened, not only when they're born, but when they start school, middle school, and high school.
Routinely, because obviously we talk so much about prevention in healthcare, but I don't know that insurance companies are paying for those screenings, right? That's a big problem. So you've done the Camino, you've done, obviously a lot of incredible things, but do you have anything on your bucket list that you're still thinking about?
Well, I definitely, there's different Caminos, and I do want to walk another Camino, a different route. Now that I have one, to say that I've done this, I want to do it. I want to do it with my husband. And I think it would be a really incredible experience. My husband did meet me in Santiago, and that was, in Santiago, being, in front of the cathedral. It's a very emotional moment, especially after you've walked so many miles, and that last stage is 16 miles in one day. And so just you're overwhelmed, and just being able to share that day, even though my husband didn't walk with me, he did go to Santiago to meet me at the end. But I want to walk a Camino with him and experience that together.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be very different from being alone, but also very enriching in different ways. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much, Martha, for sharing your story with us and for your time. I think it's so important that people understand this issue. I didn't know anything about it until I came to your event, and I have children. They're now in their 20s, but I think it's something that every parent should be aware of, and definitely take steps to prevent, and also have the equipment available. Where can people find out more about what you are doing and about Parent Heart Watch? And I will put the links in our notes.
Absolutely. So the best place is our website, parentheartwatch.org. And we are also on all social media networks.
Okay.
So Facebook, Twitter or X, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn. They can find us. We post any events that are coming up, news stories that, so people realize that this is not so rare. With all the news stories and those are the ones that get media attention. There's many cases that do not get media attention, but that's a way of us all also spreading that information so the public realizes that it happens more frequently than they think.
Yeah,
So,
and if they get that information, right, they can take that to whatever organization, whether it be a camp or an after school program, and say, hey, look at this. We need to have this equipment.
Yes, absolutely. And they can also find out information about screenings in their area that are, available to them. CPR, AED trainings, AED placements or donations. That's also available on our website. We are very involved in legislation, again, affecting change. And so we keep legislation pending and current legislation that is also available on our website that relates to sudden cardiac arrest and its prevention, CPR, AED, cardiac emergency response planning, you name it. And we update that on a monthly basis. So it's important for people to know we have tools that they can use. It's available to anyone at no cost. An amazing library of short videos that are fantastic for educating their child's facility, communities in general, also educational materials, and those are all available at no cost.
Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story. I really appreciate it, and I really think that people who listen to this podcast are going to get some very valuable information. So, not to mention hearing your powerful story. So thank you so much, Martha. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.